On top of my events, no.
They were clueless that every morning they can plug into the world with the news, weather, and traffic info that'll make their lives so much easier and more informed. Just like you and I do. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the Facebook page, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch that we're on, as we have Leroy Chuck doing so, tuning in, chiming in, as we are live here for this whole live local talk radio thing we're doing, 4 to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, as we are these days. And yes, if you're having any difficulty still picking us up, I know it's been, particularly today, coming in and out on air. Most specifically, here is what I've been essentially told to say, is that our engineers have been working on the main transmitter this week. The root of the cause of the issue has been identified, and they're working to get parts for the repair. So still may be seeing some intermittent signal issues for y'all out there. And I know this doesn't help those in the cars we talked about yesterday, but if you're wanting to tune in, you can do so, because we're still putting out the signal, even if it's not getting out as it should be, online and on the social media. So KTSMradio.com is how you can tune into all of our broadcasts. Just click the live listen link in the bottom of the page, or through the iHeartRadio app. Still out there, still discussing the local things. A bunch of things on the docket here for today. Looking at that another week or so of the winter that we see here in El Paso, though the rest of Texas bracing for, maybe I'm being a little jocular about this, because we're going to see some seriously cold temperatures coming to our area. No, I don't usually focus on the weather, but the implications that frankly could happen for the electorate for the rest of Texas, depending on how the grid fares, is pretty significant. But even here in El Paso, we are looking at freezing temperatures, below freezing temperatures, even for Thursday from our news partners over at KFOX 14. Temperatures being a high of 32 on Thursday, so maybe just peaking above freezing. So wrap those pipes, stay safe out there. And also, very specifically, there are warming centers being put out by the city of El Paso now. So if you are or know anyone who might need that, that's going to be across town, open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Wednesday through this Saturday. Again, you can find that article over there. You can also dial 311 for more information from any phone here in El Paso. But just as a list of them, the Galitzan Recreation Center, Marty Robbins Recreation Center, Memorial Senior Center, Chamizal Community Center, Wellington Chu Senior Center, Pavo Real Senior Center, and the San Juan Senior Center are going to be those warming stations in case you need to. So just keep that in mind and stay safe, wrap your pipes, all of that important stuff. But the implications that could have for electorate, among other things, the O'Rourke campaign has, of course, previously been mentioning reliability with the grid and related issues as a campaign issue, and this could be becoming even more focused on. In fact, some of the initial polling and some of the issues we're looking at from the reports we get on how things are progressing, showing that this might be even a move for the O'Rourke campaign. In fact, over on our website, ktsmradio.com, the headline, Beto O'Rourke plans power grid-themed Texas campaign tour. So don't know if he totally planned it around the weather, since I'm assuming it would have been in works a little bit before that. But again, the O'Rourke campaign probably going to seize on this even further. New polling out today, as a matter of fact, showing that for a statewide office in the Texas primary, specifically out from the University of Houston's Hobby School of Public Affairs, showing some interesting things for the top of the ballot races. Most specifically, looking like the current governor, incumbent Greg Abbott, is not going to have too much of a trouble getting there, probably even going to be avoiding runoffs in the upcoming elections as well. So this was a survey conducted in English and Spanish with 1,400 YouGov respondents who are registered to vote in Texas, which is sometimes a high bar, particularly for our local area, I do know. But here's some of the more interesting headlines to it, that in a prospective head-to-head matchup, which is reasonable to expect at this point, given the handicapping, but that Abbott does lead O'Rourke 48% to 43%. And the real interesting thing is that O'Rourke barely cleared the 50% mark with Hispanic voters. This is probably, at least in part, due to the major focus that has happened. I mean, Abbott launched his campaign officially in the Rio Grande Valley, and the whole blue wall concept that has existed for who knows how long has been a very focus on something that, well, as much as they talk about building a wall, they've been wanting to tear this one down for the GOP within Texas. So that is where a lot of campaigning has continued to focus upon. But also, he is, Abbott himself, likely to lead, according to this polling, 62% amongst likely GOP primary voters. Again, not any time that it was going to be, in doubt that he was in a very strong position. Some of the numbers coming out from the campaign showing it's even, a lot of other campaigns drawing dead at this point. The only one really showing any signs of life, too, to be fair, would be the Don Huffines campaign and the Allen West campaign. But so the reports that we talked about that were due yesterday, the 30-day out reports covering the start of this year through just before the last week of January, shows that Abbott raised about $1.4 million and spent about $4.5 million, but still has a sizable war chest of $62.6 million of cash on hand. So no real issues there. KDK Horn's campaign received no income according to their reports, but either spent or still had on hand $1.3 million. That there was apparently error in their campaign financing. Don Huffines raising $1.1 million with $2.3 left on hand, and the Allen West campaign raising $300,000 in change with about $83,000 left in cash on hand. And all others, Danny Harrelson, the Horn campaign itself, Rick Perry, drawing dead with no funds received or raised in these points. And then Paul Ballou and Chad Prather, we've also previously had on the show, interviewed him over at CPAC, not submitting their reporting for this deadline. So, again, not totally transitioning to votes directly anyway. There are certain conclusions that can be made, particularly if there is nothing coming in. It's not a good sign at this point in the campaign. So I would be almost surprised if we're not going to see maybe a couple of dropouts coming up here, particularly for those no filers or those literally $0 being brought in. The Rick Perry, not that Rick Perry, a different Rick Perry, but who is in this race, announcing that he's still in it, but literally nothing being brought in, nothing expended to there. John Browdson bringing up a different point that's been going on. Hopefully none of the East Side listeners' daughters were arrested for damaging and starting at least one fire at elementary schools there. Yeah, that a disturbing thing that was coming in over from our news partners at KFOX 14 reporting that early morning fire, and that there have been at least a couple arrested last I did see from there. So, yeah, don't do that. And yeah, just one of the dumbest things to be done here. 14 girls charged with breaking into Pebble Hills and Glen Cove elementary schools. Find something better to do, please. Leroy Chuck asking if there was any demographic information for those that were polled here. Let me pull that up here real quick for you. No, just conducted English and Spanish with 1,400 YouGov respondents who are registered to vote here in Texas. So that is the way the survey was conducted, again, by the University of Houston's Hobby School of Public Affairs here. And Jane Franklin letting us know about those broadcast issues. Again, we are going to be up in all the ways that we can as they are working out those issues. But thank you for letting us know here. So to talk more about elections specifically, there's even more stuff we got to get into here, but we're going to be joined next segment by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., to talk about, one of those election sagas happening in our area, and also highlighting one of the features that often happens in our area of a race being decided with this upcoming election, even in the primary. So due for that next break here right now. Coming out of the break, talk more about that and get to more of the comments. So if you want to comment again, particularly in these times, comment over on our socials. But we'll be back after this with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Airway Boulevard. Look for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. Stay left. Got an injury accident in Macomb Street between Sean Haggerty and Salem Drive that's slowing traffic southbound. Gateway Boulevard westbound between Airway and Chelsea. You've got slow and go traffic with 5-minute delays. Montana Avenue is slow between Lee Trevino and Yarborough for some road work. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's new hot and crispy fries. Right now at Wendy's, see why everyone is raving about their brand new fries. Natural cut, skin on with a hint of sea salt, and guaranteed to be hot and crispy or they'll replace them. You know, the way fries should be. Try Wendy's guaranteed hot and crispy fries today at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Hey Texas, this is Eric Burton.
And I'm Adrian Casada, and we are Black Pumas. We've partnered with Don't Mess with Texas to turn up the message to keep Texas clean.
So come on, join hands and let us be united. Let's all do our part in taking care of our beautiful state roads.
It's time to step up. Together, we can keep Texas litter-free.
Don't mess with Texas, y'all. Peace.
If you've ever ordered food for work, you understand. It's different. There's just so much more at stake. Whether it's a meeting, a client call, or lunch with the office that has to arrive at the actual lunchtime, food for work has to work. That's why there's Easy Cater. Food that's on time and as ordered from over 82,000 restaurants. And if there's a problem, rare, you can reach someone in seconds.
Thank you for calling Easy Cater.
Some food just doesn't work at work, but Easy Cater just does. Order 24/7 at easycater.com.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day.
I don't watch television, so I get all my news from you.
News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you can, on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. As Louis Panada pointing out that, yes, even if you're having some signal issues while work is still going on, to get everything back up full, healthy, and hail with our signal, you can find us through the iHeartRadio app, or again, like you're doing here. I know it's difficult for the car, but back up and at them as soon as we can. If it's having to happen now, there is no other option, essentially what it comes down to. But we are still putting out everything that we do through those other mediums, so you can always find us there. So if you're tuned in, you're more than welcome to. We also have James Radcliffe, Leroy Chuck, and John Brazelton tuning in and chiming in. And also joined here in studio by Robbie Gray, editor of the El Paso Inquirer. Thank you for joining us today to talk about some of the issues going on affecting the local region.
Great to be here again, warm and cozy in the studio.
Yeah, for now. Anyway, we'll see how it goes tomorrow. I might have to kick the heaters in here into high gear. So just a reminder, wrap those pipes and stay safe if you're looking to go anywhere over the next couple of days, because it could be interesting. But we were talking before the break about elections, and one of the more interesting locally based sagas, besides all the statewide drama, I mean, the O'Rourke campaign, Abbott campaign, everything going with it, has been a pretty dominating story. But that whole situation involving District 79, State Representative District 79 here in El Paso, has been an interesting one, because we talked about redistricting as it was going on within the state legislature. And sure, there are technically still some challenges going on to that, including in courts based here in El Paso. At this point, I'm not going to hold my breath that anything will happen towards that before the election actually takes place, since we are particularly on the cusp of early voting. But essentially what happened is that District 74, which had previously been held by Claudia Ordaz Perez, got district out of El Paso, and very specifically, district out from where Ordaz Perez's home was. So she was no longer able to even decide, well, I'll run in this out-of-town district, because she didn't live there anymore. So the decision that was made then was to run in District 79, which just so happens to currently be held by fellow Democrat state legislator Art Fierro, and that has been its own legal saga that you all have been reporting on, right?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, one thing that makes this race particularly interesting is the fact that it involves one state rep challenging another state rep, both Democrats. How that happened, like you said, is that redistricting left El Paso County, or will leave El Paso County with 4 state representatives instead of 5. So you have a situation where State Rep Claudia Ordaz Perez had the choice of running she could have run against State Rep Lina Ortega, but she chose to challenge State Rep Art Fierro in his District 79.
And so the real contention came down to the fact that, yes, that the home that they had previously filed under Ordaz and her husband as being their main residence was within technically Lina Ortega's District 77, but that she did have a different residence that she decided to change her registration to. And that's where the contention came down to. And we've had court filings and decisions going on about this.
So what happened there is that State Rep Claudia Ordaz Perez moved into a house in Fierro's district she had owned for years that has served as her mother's residence, and so that she could claim that as her residence. Fierro challenged that in court, and the 8th Court of Appeals denied his request for that order. So basically, at the end of the day, Ordaz Perez can face Art Fierro in his district. Yeah,
essentially determined what the court said is that they have made this move well enough ahead of the general election, of which the real rubber hits the road moment comes down to, that it cannot be challenged. Specifically, the Fierro campaign was seeking to bar the Ordaz Perez campaign from being listed on the ballot and ordering the Democrat Party chair for the region not to take action. So it specifically got a little bit interesting with how it went in. But again, now they are going to be moving forward with this, both on the ballot, according to the sample ballot over at epcountyvotes.com. So that is how this is set up. And again, one of the weirder and more unfortunate local features that happens out of this is that this primary ballot will determine the election, because in this race, again, according to the sample ballots available, there is no candidate that has filed for the Republican side of the ballot for District 79. So this one will essentially, very likely, unless there is a serious concerted writing campaign, which I'm also not going to hold my breath about, that this is going to determine who is then going to hold this seat going forward.
Right, that's correct. And I mean, at the end of the day, it means that El Paso has less representation up in Austin, which has been a perennial issue. And now we only have we will have 4 state representatives instead of 5. Now, one question that comes up is why Claudia Ordaz Perez? Why was she redistricted out?
Right.
And certainly can't say for sure, but our understanding is this goes back to the walkout, you'll remember, last year, when Democrats in the Texas legislature basically left the state in an effort to block GOP voting legislation. Apparently, the threat was if State Rep Ordaz Perez didn't return for the special session, she would lose her seat. And that is essentially what has happened.
Now, the question does come up to me is what the difference could have been if she had played ball with this supposed scenario being brought up here. What would have happened otherwise? Would someone else have been district out, or would El Paso have been left alone? Which that makes the least sense to me, because given what the census showed, and that El Paso and El Paso County in general grew none, but at a much slower rate than the rest of the state, there was having to be a shoe that was going to drop here.
Right. I mean, El Paso did grow. It's important to say that we actually grew faster than the national average, but we grew nowhere near as fast as the rest of Texas, which is just off the charts. So that was the reason we lost a district, essentially.
So yeah, that's just the rote facts there. So if that claim bears out enough or not is interesting. So District 74 is now it's on the ballot here for El Paso County, but will be largely voted. It'll be kind of similar to the Texas 23rd Congressional District that is currently held by Republican Tony Gonzalez. in that, sure, it's within the county, but then stretches far reaches east, covering like Big Bend and that kind of sparsely populated areas, and often ending up being on the outskirts of San Antonio similarly. So that's the kind of situation we're looking for District 74 now. So District 79 is now going to be determined essentially by this vote, but that also brings up another interesting and frankly unfortunate local situation when it comes to the state reps. You mentioned the walkout there, and it wouldn't even take an astute political observer to say that, though, that'll probably make right for some challenges coming up here. But we have, except for, again, District 74, which is now out of our area, and we'll have, there is a Democrat on the ballot, Eddie Morales, and a Republican, Catherine Parker. So that race will go with them straight on to the general election. But then the only member of the local state delegation, representative, or senator that is being challenged, they are, well, it's only within the state senator and all of these other seats. So we are talking about Mary Gonzalez from District 75, Lena Ortega from District 77, Joe Moody from District 78. Mary Gonzalez has a primary opponent, but no of them, of that group just mentioned, has a general election opponent on the ballot. There is no Republican running against them, which still, we've talked about this before, but it still surprises me, given how easy of a campaign line that would have seemed to me.
Yes, it is surprising.
And that is unfortunately just what we end up seeing here too often in El Paso. Tell me that you like talking about politics but not doing anything about it, without telling me you like talking about politics without doing anything about it. They are, just not there. Leroy Chuck saying, first time I've ever heard of a politician losing their job for not doing their job. Again, hasn't technically lost it, but again, to get to, if the tale is to be believed that is coming through certain unnamed sources as it comes to it, and the general talk between politicos and those active within the political scene statewide, that is apparently the ultimatum that was made and apparently followed through on. So again, hasn't technically lost the job yet, but there is at least one El Paso state rep who is going to no longer be seated after this, and the campaign really coming down to Ordaz Perez versus Fierro. So again, the unique situation of two incumbents facing down each other.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that's just one of the uniquities of how El Paso politics works, and the fact that we definitely need to get people out into these polls. Remember, early voting does start on February 14th coming up here. So make your plan to vote, and then election day being on March 1st, unless, again, there's that outside chance of something happening with the court challenges, but I'm not going to hold my breath about that occurring here in Texas. And then, of course, this leads to the general election, of which there are some interesting situations and candidates going on. Again, some of those campaign finance issues going on, but sticking with the local issues that are coming along with this, one of the kind of outskirts issues that has been talked about a little bit is about broadband in our area, and that is something that you're all reporting on this week about Spectrum, specifically expanding those service areas to what have been now referred to as essentially internet deserts.
Yeah, I mean, El Paso is sometimes considered an internet desert, and basically that means that there's not as much access to broadband internet here as there is other places. I mean, it's hard to imagine somebody that doesn't have access to internet, but there is actually swaths of El Paso where the cables just don't run to their house and you cannot access it. What we had reported on is at least one small step forward towards rectifying that. And yeah, Spectrum did recently invest to expand fiber into rural areas. It's actually part of a federal program, and part of the funding comes from the federal government to do this. It's subsidized, but they did run it to over, I think, 1,200 homes out in the rural parts of El Paso County.
So that just kind of deals with how El Paso is growing and developing, and the capability out there for potentially more population to come in. Again, we're joined in studio right now by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., talking about some of their recent reporting and the situations that evolved from it. We're due for that next break right now. So coming out of the break, we'll talk more about this and some of the other business developments, including billionaire buying a packaging plant and what that means. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso coming up after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Justin Creed, your CBS 4 News Update. Police are investigating a possible case of arson at Pebble Hills Elementary School in El Paso from Sunday. Since then, a video of the fire posted on social media has surfaced showing kids running out of the school. A spokesperson for YSD said it's unknown how the kids got into the building. The district is working with El Paso police to figure out what exactly happened. Just 2 miles away from Pebble Hills, another YSD school was also hit by vandals. Staff members at Glen Cove Elementary spent hours cleaning up classrooms and hallways. Like the fire at Pebble Hills, the vandals also happened on Sunday. It's unknown if the fire and the vandalisms are connected. New Mexico State University is updating its COVID-19 guidelines. The university reports that it will no longer allow food or drink to be sold during indoor sporting events, including basketball games at the Pan American Center. The university reports that after Saturday's Pack the Pan Am game against Grand Canyon University, fans were not following COVID protocols during the game. The new measure will stay in place until the mask mandate is lifted. Fans who don't comply will be kicked out of the events. With your CBS 4 News update, I'm Justin Cree.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Airway Boulevard. Look for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. Stay left. Got an injury accident Macomb Street between Sean Haggerty and Salem Drive that's slowing traffic southbound. Gateway Boulevard westbound between Airway and Chelsea. You've got slow and go traffic with 5-minute delays. Montana Avenue is slow between Lee Trevino and Yarborough for some road work. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. A quiet setup for us tonight and again for your day tomorrow. But tomorrow afternoon into the evening, we quickly start to see our weather deteriorate as our next storm system arrives. Look for a chance for some rain to change over to some icy conditions for a short period overnight before completely changing over to snow for Thursday, along with a very hard freeze for the borderland.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Don't drive much, don't pay much with pay-per-mile insurance from Allstate. Life is good when you're in the driver's seat. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but thought it would be too difficult? Then try Babbel. Babbel starts by teaching you words and phrases that gradually get more complex. Soon, you're practicing short conversations. So in 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking a new language in a few weeks. Babbel is built around real life. It teaches you practical conversations that you will actually use. Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free. Just go to babbel.com today. That's BABBEL.com.
Now may be the perfect time to buy a home financed by Loan Depot. Loan Depot has over 300 loan products to help you make home ownership a reality. Interest rates are near historic lows. Rates will not stay low forever. So call 866-888-LOAN so one of our thousands of loan officers can help you find the right loan. Call 866-888-LOAN or visit loandepot.com. Loan Depot. Rates are subject to change. Equal housing opportunity lender. NMLS number 174457. Licensed in all 50 states.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Hiring can be a headache. That's why there's Indeed, the hiring platform that removes the hassle. Sponsor a job and immediately get a short list of quality candidates. And you can schedule and conduct video interviews right on their site. Visit Indeed.com/credit. This report is sponsored by Indeed.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, and a lot of issues that we'll be discussing as we are joined in studio here by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., and talking to us about some of their recent reporting and upcoming stuff. So we're taking a lot of comments coming in. Team Pam over on YouTube saying cancel Whoopi Goldberg. We don't have much control over that, but hey, we'll talk about the local issues here. But if that's important to you and you want to chime in during the show, you're more than welcome to, because Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, that's where we're all up and at 'em. And we'll take those phone calls probably a little bit later, opening up towards the end of this segment here. But Robbie, before the break, we were talking about some of the election implications that we have coming up and the way the ballot has been set and how we got there were some legal challenges. But then we also then slipped in there about broadband access. And so the infrastructure here in El Paso and what is available. It's often said that geography is destiny, and geographical features such as, roads, transportation, information technology is a very important part of that. And that's why, just a little bit, we've been seeing a current, as we have talked both with you early at the start of the year, and then with some others, such as a UTEP professor of economics, Tom Fullerton, about what is going on with some of these economic situations. And we're seeing this in small ways as well, such as one of your top stories this week, El Paso billionaire Paul Foster buying a struggling packaging plant out in Santa Teresa.
Yeah, so through Paul Foster's company, Franklin Mountain Capital, he purchased a high-tech packaging plant. I know that sounds a little funny, but basically, it sounds like boxes, but they make these sort of flashy printed sort of displays and boxes and stuff out in Santa Teresa. Apparently, the business was in a bit of trouble. It was caught unawares by COVID. Been a tough 2 years, and the owner essentially made a cold call. He had heard about Paul Foster, reached out to his company and said, "Hey, you want to invest in this?" And I guess they caught his interest.
Yeah, caught his interest so much that they bought out the plant and kept the owner on, the John Perullo, on as the plant's general manager. But it's an interesting investment coming into, again, high-tech packaging, but flashier packaging, like you said. You got a good picture of over in this latest issue showing what they do and what they make. I've been fascinated with the whole Santa Teresa area for years now. And so knowing that there's that kind of interest in acquiring a business, it bodes well for what we're looking at in my mind. I might be reading way too much out of these tea leaves, but given this and the other currents that we've seen of how the recovery and the continued removal of all the concerns and issues from the pandemic is going to go for our area anyway.
Yeah, what really makes this story interesting is the broader context and trends here. Everyone's always watching to see somebody like a Paul Foster, where they put their money, where they're investing. But in this case, we've been hearing a lot about the supply chain challenges, and anybody who's eaten at a restaurant or gone in a grocery store and seen, shrinking menus and more expensive items and that sort of thing knows exactly what this is all about. But there's a trend very specific here to our region that is actually positive for our region. It's been a nearshoring trend as more manufacturers are seeing that maybe this is more of a permanent sort of new normal, where cheap, reliable shipping from Asia is just not a given. More manufacturers are moving production closer to their customers.
Yeah, that is something that is not even just being reported on locally, but nationally and internationally. Bloomberg, one of the outlets I remember most recently reporting onto it, speaking of towards the start of the year, about like 7 specific international businesses looking to be within the Chihuahua or specifically Juarez area. So this is a feature and an issue that we're probably going to be going on for quite a while in our area. And so, again, your top story this week about, or one of the top ones, about that firm being bought by, or the plant rather, by Paul Foster. Again, just a small microcosm example of what seems to be potentially a larger trend. And again, the capacity that comes along with it. Because a packaging plant, sure, they can package up their own materials, but this then is kind of, in my mind, towards a support businesses for then other things coming into our area and being able to allow them to have their packaging and products and that kind of a thing. So it's maybe allowing for further development to happen, in my mind.
Yeah, that's right. And, more broadly here in the region, I believe the occupancy rates for warehouses, manufacturing space is essentially getting pretty close to zero. It's somewhere between 1% and 2% availability. As more companies are seeing the risk of shipping things from Asia and also just worried about things being delayed, they're looking for more space to store stuff closer to customers. So when we look at Juarez, when we look at El Paso, a lot of warehouse space is being bought up. Manufacturers are expanding, not necessarily seeing new manufacturers moving into the region, but those that are here are expanding their capacity.
Yeah, and that is a very interesting trend. I think very specifically, I do have the exported manufacturing employment in Ciudad Juarez, the report that we had from a UTEP professor, Tom Fullerton, that showed that there was, that there was still a great interest in there being more hiring along these lines. And so here's that graph there showing that, yeah, 2020 saw a dip, but that it has still been at or even reaching the same levels it was pre-pandemic, that this has been a trend going on for a better part of more than the last 10 years, frankly, of seeing an increase in the demand for employment and manufacturing and the warehousing, all that comes along with it in Juarez. So this is not a new thing, but it wasn't exactly stymied too much. Like the trend has still continued strongly, even after the advent of the pandemic, which is very interesting to me. We're at higher levels than we were pre-2020 as of right now within Juarez.
Yeah, and another example of this is actually, I'll give you a sneak peek of a story we're working on now. There's a company here called Plastic Molding Technology, and they've been family owned for decades. They're here locally in El Paso. They produce plastic parts for all sorts of big name brands. You've probably been around one of their little plastic pieces in your car. I mean, their stuff ends up kind of in a lot of name brand sort of things. But anyways, there's a company in San Diego, a holding company, that has invested in them and actually purchased the company. So it's another example of a firm seeing an opportunity here on the border in manufacturing and in warehousing.
So that is a trend that could continue. But of course, as we're talking about employment, the demands have rarely been higher, not within the last decade, at the very least, for that demand in Juarez. And reports coming out with nationwide, there being up to or more than 11 million jobs currently available. So that has then led to the question, like you said, about restaurants having serious supply chain issues. And that is something that is actually, there is a program available within the state now that it's hard to pin down exactly what's happening. A lot of talk has been done about it. But one of the more kind of pressing issues in my mind is those that, if they had lost caregivers, the elderly, or they are having concerns about going back into the workforce because of things like childcare, there is now a program statewide in Texas that could help address at least a little bit of that portion.
Yeah, that's right. So funding through the state has become available, including here in El Paso, for certain workers, especially those in the service industry. So that would include restaurants, that sort of thing. And essentially, it's 1 year of free childcare for those who can qualify.
Yeah, and so that is being offered, as you all reporting here, under the Service Industry Recovered Childcare Program, also known as SIR for SIR, extension of the Texas Workforce Commission's subsidized childcare services. So this, that is an issue that may affect more than is easily considered. It comes to my mind. I don't have those issues personally, but if you're in that situation of wondering what to do about, childcare and, schools still being a concern, an issue, this can be something that could help deal with that. And then again, ease the transition, frankly, even for some, back to the workforce, not even just from unemployment, because we have seen with the unemployment rates being as low as they technically are, reaching even pre-pandemic levels in some places, even if we're not quite there yet in El Paso, these kind of sticking factors and addressing them is probably going to be very important about then actually getting the workforce back to the same size it was.
Right. When you look at the unemployment rate, what it doesn't capture is the growing group of people that have actually left the workforce entirely. And one group in particular is women. There have been more barriers to women to re-enter the workforce, and one of those has been childcare. And so one of the hopes is that this program could allow more women to re-enter the workforce.
Yeah, because even still considerations come down about taking care of children and doing it, and it often falls to women still in even the modern day. So that could make it a little bit easier and deal with some of the other issues, because another thing that has been kind of seen as, even with the inflation as bad as we've talked about, even with services and such demand as it is, there's been another slightly harder to measure area, and it's a phrase that I love because it's so ridiculous, called skimpflation, in that you had talked about even like serving sizes. I think we talked about it off air. Serving sizes getting smaller. That is an example of certain things costing maybe the same, maybe a little bit more, but the absolute value of what you're getting being lower. Another example comes from like airlines, where like, sure, they're still offering flights and such, maybe at discounted rates, maybe the same rates, but that you get less with it. You don't necessarily get the food service with it. You don't get the drink service or other things that used to come with it. So they might not be totally reflected in the final value of the service as you had paid for it. You get less value out of it, and you end up spending more money because of it. So that's kind of been discussed as a hidden factor of all the factors that we do talk about that are not favorable looking, like inflation and such, that is harder to measure and may be kind of hidden within all of this.
Yeah, I mean, inflation doesn't, I mean, the focus is on prices increasing, but that's not the only impact. I mean, I've had personal experience going to a hotel and, oh, we don't offer that anymore, whether it's like the airport shuttle or whatever it might be, or maybe you've gone to a restaurant and you've noticed your favorite dish just doesn't taste as good because they're using cheaper ingredients, or there's ingredients that are missing, or maybe it's a bit smaller.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people are experiencing that as well. And, you know, the staffing shortages work into that too. I mean, it's pretty hard to run a business or run a restaurant or a hotel when you're short of staff. So you have to get creative.
Yeah, so those are just some of the factors we're looking on and things that you're working on reporting on coming up. Again, if you haven't been paying attention here, our guest right now has been Robbie Gray, editor of the El Paso Inc., and their latest issue out now, and other ones coming up here shortly. So thanks very much for coming in to talk with us about some of the big stories and issues going on and affecting our region here today.
Thanks, Andrew. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you on. And we're due for that next break right now. So coming out of the break, we will open up those phone lines. So if you're wanting to call in, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound at Brown, got a stalled vehicle that's blocking the right shoulder. Gateway Boulevard, westbound between Airway and Chelsea. Slow traffic with 5-minute delays. Macomb, southbound between Sean Haggerty and Salem. An injury accident slowing southbound traffic. Fred Wilson Avenue between Alabama and Dyer. The crash is at Byron and Fred Wilson. Medical crew on the scene there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Are you a safe driver? Are you looking to save money? With DriveWise from Allstate, the safer you drive, the more you can save. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Ben and Ashley I, Almost Famous, is the Bachelor Recap podcast you can't miss. Breaking down every episode from Bachelor Nation.
Clayton begs for her to stay. That's a nuts response.
Yeah.
So that absolutely
fantastic.
That absolutely tells me that this will be an awesome season. And I
agree. Listen to Ben and Ashley I, Almost Famous, on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
Mass Mutual knows that your finances can be an uncomfortable conversation.
Mark, we should really talk about our money.
Yep, we really should.
Like, we never talk about our savings.
No, we never talk about that. Or our assets.
Or our debt.
Yeah, we really should talk about our debt.
We need one of those financial plans.
One of those will make a difference.
We should talk about it.
We really should.
Talk to us about financial wellness today. Feel comfortable about tomorrow. Mass Mutual. Live Mutual.
Under Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas economy is full speed ahead. Ranked the #1 state for business every year he's been governor. #1 in exporting products all over the world. #1 in businesses moving to the state. And well over 1 million new jobs since the pandemic. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, the Texas economy is the envy of the nation. But under Biden and Beto, Texas would come to a screeching halt. Open borders causing chaos and endangering our safety. Higher taxes hurting families and businesses. The Green New Deal crushing our economy. On March 1st, vote to keep Texas on the right track. Governor Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Check out the new Our American Stories podcast, the show where the American people are the star, telling inspiring stories of history, sports, business, faith, and love, and your stories too. Subscribe on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or any of those other ways we do it. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or live streaming online. We are up here, and you can comment throughout the show if you are interested in doing so, as we have a number doing so already. Leroy Chuck, Calvin Williams, Ian Grimm, and more. John Browsleton, Louise Team Pam, James Radcliffe, Fred Marquez, and yes, we are very aware of some signal issues out there. My understanding, emergency maintenance on the tower route issue has been identified, but may have some signal issues in certain parts of town as that is being fixed. So we'll still be on air and still be here in the, well, online capacity we are, because you can always, if we're on air, as long as, frankly, the signal is going out in any way, even on the online, ktsmradio.com. and or the iHeartRadio app is one way that you can do it. And plus, we're also on the social media as we are. So we are taking those calls. We did open up the phone line there if you wanted to call in. That number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. That's still working, I am positive of. So if you want to do that, Leroy Chuck with a couple of comments on our discussion here right now. Not buying that there are people without internet here in El Paso. Okay, so here's the thing about being able to measure that. You wouldn't be hearing from those people online, obviously, if they don't have it. I'm aware of at least more than a couple of stories in our area that when we were in the height of the pandemic and the school shutdowns and everything that came with it, that there were kids who were going to sit outside the closed library that still had their internet service on, and they were doing their assignments that way. So again, it's a hard problem to see if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I guarantee you, and also we're specifically talking about broadband because I think dial-up still technically exists out there somewhere. I don't relish those days or the thought of having to use it or go back to it. But, I mean, broadband high-speed internet access is definitely not available throughout all of our area. Arguably not even necessarily my area sometimes. But he also points out that they used to sell, when it comes to the skimpflation idea, that they used to sell the 10-pound bags of ice at gas station. Now they sell 7 to 8 pounds for the same price. So that is exactly an example of that phenomenon. Again, skimpflation. I love the phrase because it just sounds so ridiculous, really, when you think about it. The idea of having the same kind of product or service at the same price, but you get less out of it. So you end up having to spend more money. It's almost not quite insidious, but sign of the times here, Kevin Williams letting us know that his part of town, that the signal does seem good at Montana and Hawkins. So thanks for letting us know there. Again, it just depends. It's a weird tower that we've actually got for 690. It's not one tower up on the mountain. It's actually out in the desert because that's apparently the way AMs works. I've gotten a little bit of a crash course myself in engineering, and it's a phased tower array, meaning it's not one point that goes off to all directions. It's different antennas that point in one cardinal direction, more or less, 4 directions overall, if it's not technically true north. Give you some leeway there, but that's how it works. So that's why in different areas of town, it might be picked up differently, essentially. So we have had those repairs going on, so we do appreciate you sticking with us as we are. Again, some of the topics we're discussing today, the local economic developments and some specific instances of how they're going forward. Again, thank you to our guests from last couple of segments there, Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., to talk about what they're reporting on and what's coming up with them. Those developments are fascinating to me because, sure, we've talked about big picture. We've talked about the jobs that are available and vacant currently, and the impediments that might be getting addressed to get to them. But then when we see the local developments and how it's progressing, even in the micro, it then leads to the macro. And then how is El Paso progressing overall? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like I've been seeing a lot of people wearing NASA shirts or jerseys or paraphernalia around lately. And maybe I'm taking that a little bit too optimistically, but people will be more interested perhaps, and this is in the UTEP area too, so maybe with an extra grain of salt, but maybe more people being interested in the whole space race and the local impact we've been seeing to the local space race with the billionaires competing on either side of us in Doña Ana County and near Van Horn. Again, I maybe am a little bit too optimistic for my own good sometimes when I'm thinking about these issues, but knowing how the economics are developing and what the future of this area could look like if these currents continue is just flat out fascinating to me. But even as we are looking at the elections, before we end up the end of the hour here, I just want to put out one more call for those who are maybe listening on air, particularly if it's back up where at least Calvin Williams is, that we are looking at some very cold days coming towards the end of this week, starting tomorrow, but then even from our news partners over at KFOX 14, again, bears repeating, we are looking at the forecast showing barely above freezing, if at all, for the end of the week. So there are going to be those warming centers set up at most of the senior centers here in El Paso, but even looking at snow chances here. So remember the 4 Ps: pets, people, pipes, and plants to deal with, but we'll be looking at well below freezing, and even towards the end of the week, maybe even not being above freezing at any point. So just stay safe out there. I mean that emphatically anytime we talk about it, because it could be, well, getting the weather that we do for what you call winter around here. And pray for the rest of Texas, particularly if this could become a campaign issue or not. Well, it's already been a campaign issue, but how this could affect the upcoming election is even more interesting. 32 degrees, the high forecasted by our news partners at the KFOX 14 weather lab. And, oh, geez. So just please take care of those and you and yours around you. All right, we got to end up taking that break for the top of the hour here. So coming out of the break, we will get to more of the comments and more of the calls coming in. A lot we're discussing here, and so we will take that call. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after the top of the hour news with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Brown, got a stalled vehicle that's blocking the right shoulder. Gateway Boulevard, westbound between Airway and Chelsea. Slow traffic with 5-minute delays. Macomb, southbound between Sean Haggerty and Salem. An injury accident slowing southbound traffic. Fred Wilson Avenue between Alabama and Dyer. The crash is at Byron and Fred Wilson. Medical crew on the scene there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Washington politicians are getting richer and richer. A report says Nancy Pelosi could be worth as much as $250 million. And Dr. Fauci just revealed he's worth over $10 million. Not bad for working in public service. If you're tired of the hypocrisy, you need to watch Stinchfield. He's on Newsmax every weekday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and everyone is tuning in. Grant Stinchfield exposes the Washington insiders in his series Hypocrites in America. He even names the hypocrites and reveals their secret agendas. You'll also see Michael Savage and Dick Morris giving their take on Stinchfield. So get Newsmax. It's on every major cable system. If your cable operator doesn't carry Newsmax, tell them you want it. Or watch Newsmax free on your smart TV, like Samsung, Vizio, or LG. And streaming on Pluto, Zumo, Roku, and more. Millions are turning off their old media for Newsmax, a trusted source. Watch Stinchfield tonight and find out why.
Making smart decisions with your money starts with financial literacy. It's all about how to save, borrow, and invest. You need financial literacy to buy a car, pay for college, start a business, or purchase a home. Financial literacy is key to personal success. Operation Hope and iHeartRadio have teamed to help everyone have a fair shot at living their best life. Start a plan for your future. Join our growing national movement at FL4A.org. That's FL4A.org.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Because you never hear this.
Hey, hon, I'm late.
Chris, I am so pleased you missed the beginning of our meeting.
Thanks for making me wait, Dad. I talked to a lot of strangers.
Check on your commute. Stay informed. Traffic and weather all day. Or you might never hear the end of it.
Well, you were late to our anniversary dinner that one time.
Yes, how could I forget?
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook.
2 officers at a college in Virginia are dead after a campus shooting. Bridgewater College President David Bushman sent out an email to staff and students announcing their deaths on Tuesday afternoon. He identified the late officers as Campus Police Officer John Painter and Campus Safety Officer J.J. Jefferson. Bushman added the two were close friends. An investigation is ongoing. One student is dead and another is in critical condition after a shooting outside a school in Minnesota. Richfield Police Commissioner Jay Henthorne said 2 students were found shot when officers arrived on scene.
On February 1st, 2022, at 12:07 p.m., we had a shooting that occurred at the South Education Center at 7415 Penn Avenue South here in the city of Richfield.
It happened at the South Education Center in Richfield, south of Minneapolis. Both students were taken to an area hospital where one of them was pronounced dead. Parts of the U.S. are bracing for a winter storm. The Weather Prediction Center says the impacts will start tonight and go through Thursday morning. The southern Rockies, Central Plains, and Midwest could get between 6 and 12 inches of snow. More than a quarter inch of ice is possible from Texas to the Ohio Valley. Winter storm warnings are in place from the Great Lakes region of Ohio and Michigan all the way to parts of Texas and Colorado. Nearly 47.5 million workers left their jobs last year. Lisa Taylor reports.
That's according to the Labor Department. Its job openings and labor turnover report said 4.3 million quit in December. The overall figure for 2021 is more than 5 million over the total from 2019 prior to the pandemic.
Pfizer and BioNTech are seeking FDA emergency use authorization for their COVID-19 vaccine for young children. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The Citadel will honor the first group of Black women to graduate from the college. Sarah Bartlett reports from Charleston.
A parade and reception will be held Friday for the 7 women who graduated in 2002. They were the first Black female cadets to graduate from the military college. After 20 years, the group will be together again on campus and honored. The Citadel will also recognize Charles Foster, the first African American to graduate from the college. He's honored each February as part of Black History Month. Friday's parade is open to the public at Summerall Field. The reception is private for all members of the campus community.
Undocumented residents in Miami-Dade, Florida can now get a county-sanctioned identification card. Commissioners approved Mayor Daniela Levine Cava's plan to create a county-approved ID card for people who don't have a license or state ID. The card will not replace a government ID, so you can't use one to register to vote or get financial assistance, but it will allow holders to file police reports and access library, park, and shelter services. Mayor Eric Adams is welcoming the Lunar New Year by pushing for safety in New York City's Asian community.
Enjoy the music! It's the Year of the Tiger, and the 40-day festival included music and fireworks in Chinatown late this morning, and a promise by New York City's new mayor, Eric Adams.
I'm recommitted more than ever to make sure my AAPI community is safe as we end the violence against this community. We stand united.
The Lunar New Year is celebrated to usher in a year of good fortune and prosperity. Sarah Lee Kessler, New York.
Domino's Pizza is rewarding customers who choose carryout over delivery. The pizza company announced that starting today, customers who select carryout over delivery will be given a $3 credit to use on a future order. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Thanks. That's thanks. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Breakfast, now with a free drink with any breakfast sandwich purchase. Get a better breakfast at Wendy's. Buy any breakfast sandwich and get any size drink in a Wendy's cup free. Hot coffee, Diet Coke, or vanilla frosted-chino? Yes, free. Get your free drink when you buy a Wendy's breakfast sandwich today. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but thought it would be too difficult? Then try Babbel. Babbel starts by teaching you words and phrases that gradually get more complex. Soon, you're practicing short conversations. So in 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking a new language in a few weeks. Babbel is built around real life. It teaches you practical conversations that you will actually use. Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free. Just go to Babbel.com today. That's BABBEL.com.
El Paso's love for baseball can be traced back to the first baseball team, the El Paso Browns, organized in 1892. And over the years, the team name would change several times. In 1926, El Paso's baseball team, then the El Paso Giants, runs into trouble when they move from the Frontier League to the Copper League. The Copper League was known as the Outlaw League since many teams and players were often expelled from organized baseball for consorting with gamblers, loose women, and rabble-rousers. Though El Paso's Giants weren't outlaws, El Paso's reputation for gambling and sporting houses just might have been a contributing factor in a player's bad behavior.
The El Paso History Show with Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent is sponsored by Patrick Tuttle Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate, Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant in Canutillo, Mission Del Rey Southwest for gifts and decor, Keystone Heritage Park, and Monterey Asset Management. It's the El Paso History Show, Saturday morning at 10, streaming live on Facebook and on News Radio 690.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways that you can tune in, chime, and be a part of the show, and that way got a lot of comments in here right now, particularly over on the Facebook page. The Skeptic Squad lives over there and is alive and well for sure. Kevin Williams, Leroy, Chuck, Ion Grimm, John Browselton, James Radcliffe, Fred Marquez, Louis Pinato, and more over there. Also some YouTube comments and such coming in here. So it's one of the better ways you can comment throughout our show. And particularly if you're experiencing any issues with our signal, we're up over there. Plus KTSMradio.com and the iHeartRadio app. So that's a lot of the ways we do it. And just to Leroy Chuck's point from earlier, why internet is important in this day and age. Again, the root issue has been uncovered, I'm being told, with our actual physical tower, and repairs are commencing apace. So just stick with us. We'll keep being here. So we are taking those calls right now. The phone line's open, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to Robbie's interview, and this ought to make, and I'm sure it's making manufacturing and industry think twice about the just-in-time inventory, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's a big kink. So now maybe we'll be seeing the big warehouses and the storage, and they'll see the benefits to that. They have to weigh the benefits and the risks of continuing with that type of inventory. But I wanted to comment on a gentleman that called in, I believe on Friday. I didn't get his name. I just heard toward the end of it. And he specifically said, I hope Barbara's listening to this. Well, I was listening, but I'm puzzled, but I'm going to comment on it anyway. He mentioned throwing rocks at Mexico, and he said rocks, not stones, but throwing rocks at Mexico and Latin American countries and other countries. And I thought, well, he's obviously not listening to me, or he's not grasping what I'm saying. I am a firm believer in legal immigration. It works. It gives us secure borders, and I believe we're safer for secure borders. So I don't understand I guess he thinks that I've been making derogatory comments about Mexico and other countries, which is far from what I've done. I've merely stated the facts. And then he mentioned Kiki Camareno. And Kiki is an example of loving your country, because he was fighting a war on drugs, and he never gave up. So I don't know if this caller means we should just throw up our arms because Mexico told the Reagan administration that don't blame them for our drug problems. I'm not blaming Mexico for our drug problems. What I am saying is that Mexico is fueling the fire. They're aware that China's shipping in fentanyl. They're aware that it's crossing through our borders. Mexico could have a tighter border, in my opinion. Like we're trying to get a tighter border. Well, we were under President Trump. Let me rephrase that. But for him to think that because Mexico believes we have a problem, that we should throw our arms up in the air and let them come in with impunity. And actually, that's exactly what they're doing right now under this administration anyway. Fentanyl has gone up. We just heard in Colorado, 110,000 pills that were laced with fentanyl were confiscated. And now we have the cartels, the three of them, and I've mentioned this before, in White City, Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
They had 5 industrial complexes of illegal drugs growing the illegal marijuana. So I'm not one to give up. I think we need to fight the battle. I think if we want to save our generations, our kids, future generations, then we need to be vigilant. We need to stay on this. Simply giving up is just not a part of who America is. I mean, here we are spending billions of dollars. Biden's going to send billions of dollars to secure Ukraine's borders. Why are we not that significant? Our children, our adults are dying from addiction to drugs. Under President Trump, at least, he confronted Xi Jinping and said, you know, you need to stop the fentanyl from coming through. I've not heard Biden say one peep about the drug problem that we now have, about the drugs coming across our borders. That's why it's important to secure our borders and not put blame on Mexico or anybody, but call it to their attention that they are fueling a fire and it doesn't benefit their country or ours, because we don't want to both be third world countries sometime down the road or having a drug addicted population. It doesn't benefit anybody. So that's my view, and I'm thinking that's what he meant, that I was, throwing rocks rather than stones.
I think
but
so
that's
too.
not
Yeah.
who I am. I just don't believe in, and I don't condone open borders. And I'm a fighter, and I will continue. I have 2 grandchildren. I don't want for them to grow up in a generation with drug addicted people, and that's where we're heading to. If we don't call this out for what it is, if we don't keep, reminding that Mayorkas has got to go, I just think we have a disastrous policy on the border right now, and there's nothing wrong with secure borders. So that's what I would like to tell this gentleman. I didn't even get his name, but that's what I had on my mind this morning. About him.
Yeah, I don't remember his name offhand, the other words, but yeah, I think that you're right that his primary focus was about the drugs, and his point that often gets brought up that that the insatiable demand on this side is that what then creates, I mean, it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem the way it gets described sometimes, which came first, the supply or the demand. And in this case, it seems like they have both grown proportionately to each other. So no, this may not be the fault of Mexico or Central or South American countries. The general policy and the way it comes through, except for, often U.S. funded efforts, is not exactly helpful when it comes to then dealing with it, because, I mean, the solution often runs to the same problem, chicken or the egg, which do you stop first, the demand or the supply? A lot of focus. I mean, the entire war on drugs has been primarily focused on the supply side of it. And there are certain comments that can be made about the effectiveness of that. But, I mean, I think you're right about Mexico, maybe not, again, actively trying to make it worse, but a lot of their efforts, I mean, we saw quite the sea change with Mexico's own border enforcement over the course of the Trump administration. The entire revamping, reactivation, and reconfiguration of the Mexican National Guard, the Guardia Nacional, into a border security force. They just really hadn't been present before that. And, I mean, Mexico still has plenty of problems, to my understanding, on a national security kind of standpoint. Mexico, again, to my understanding, and if this is different, I would love to be known, that does not even have the ability to necessarily do like rogue flight interdiction, as speaking about Ukraine and Russia, that Russia does a lot of like trying to violate airspace, testing the limits, has been going on for years now over there. If Mexico had to do a similar kind of thing, they essentially would not be able to because of the lack of resources that are available for that kind of thing. So, I mean, and there are certain parts within Mexico itself where there basically is no rule of law and sovereignty is essentially held by cartels. There are ongoing issues there for sure, but doing a little bit more, and I think the administration helping more with going on to what policies can be done, cross-border cooperation would be a nice thing to see. That would almost be a new policy being done by this administration, which we still haven't seen. We're still seeing either warmed over, it feels like Obama administration policies, or forced upon them, quote unquote, forced upon them Trump era policies, which my guess is that they're not all that in reality too unhappy about, because they get to then say the policy is in place and, oh, no, it wasn't our policy. So everything you don't like about it is not our fault, but everything that is working about it, well, we did put it back into place. I mean, it's kind of they get to have their cake and eat it too. Frankly, the way it's come down, it does kind of seem like, even if it's not actually working that well.
Well, after listening to Mayorkas last week, nothing is working under this administration.
Yeah, we got a lot of issues, and I'm still baffled that there's anyone arguing about the whole crisis definition of it now. Leroy Chook saying, good luck getting rid of drugs now. And to paraphrase the way someone else has put it, I'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs, is kind of what it feels like. I'll agree.
Well, we haven't lost the fight, so they're not winning yet.
Fair enough. All right, well, thank you for the points on the call. Do appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. We got to take that next break right now. But coming out of the break, we'll get to more of those calls on the line. That number to do so, if you're wanting to, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Sunland Park. There's an injury accident there with medical crew on the way. Gateway Boulevard westbound at Yarborough. Another injury crash. George Dieter Drive at Treywood. Look for an injury accident. Medical crew, EMS on the scene. You could take Lee Trevino or Montwood Drive as alternates. Another injury accident. Geronimo on ramp at the I-10 westbound. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Win $1,000.
No way. No way. No way.
Oh, baby. Yes way.
No way.
It's a grand in your hand. Listen every hour from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win.
A grand in your hand is brought to you by Approved Autos. Drive out in your new ride in less than an hour. Choose from every make and model from their super clean, hand-picked inventory and get payments as low as $159 a month. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. If you got your license and you got a job, they smell a deal. The deals are sweeter at Approved Autos, 8498 Alameda.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
Have you ever thought that the one thing connecting you between work and family is your car? Brake Masters always thinks this way. It's what we like to call being in Brake Master shape. Download coupons at BrakeMasters.com. Then head home safely again.
Brake Masters. We give you an honest break.
Terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. Terms and conditions apply. Visit ISSA online for details.
Hey, how'd you like to get paid to work out? Yes, I said get paid to work out. Now you can with ISSA, the global leader in personal fitness certification. If you're interested in a money-making career in fitness as a personal trainer, now is your time because ISSA is guaranteeing you will get a job. That's right. There's a huge demand for certified personal trainers right now. So once you get ISSA certified, they guarantee you'll get a job. Just text LEAD to 323232 now to get started for free. You do everything at your own pace and 100% online. Live your life on your terms. Get certified and train like you want. Full-time at a gym, at home, or as a side hustle, whatever works for you. Don't wait another day to start your career in fitness. Get certified and start making money fast, guaranteed. Just text LEAD to 323232 right now to get started with your ISSA certification for free. Text the word LEAD to 323232.
iHeartRadio Earth knows small changes make a big difference for the environment. Did you know that keeping your tires even a single PSI lower than recommended means worse mileage and more trips to the pump? So do the environment and your wallet a favor and always check the tire pressure. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips on smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
New to Curiosity Street.
Investing on Wall Street was much like the Wild West.
Hear the untold stories.
More and more people were investing in the market.
Of the history of Wall Street.
You got caught up in the frenzy.
On the Curiosity Original, Titans, The Rise of Wall Street. Plus, Neanderthals, brutish and dim-witted, or clever and capable.
Maybe we are not as unique as we thought.
Find out on who was the real Neanderthal. It's all on Curiosity Street. Annual plans are $20. That's $1.67 a month. Visit CuriosityStream.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. A lot of ways that you can comment on the show, including commenting on those pages or calling in. We do have those phone lines open through the end of the hour now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A few things we're talking about here today, and always focused on the impact that they have here in the borderland. Do have that winter storm impending. Now, I know we don't usually talk about the weather, but the electoral implications that come along with it remain to be seen. I mean, there's some human suffering potential in the meantime there. So as a reminder, 4Ps, people, pets, plants, pipes, take care of those in and around where you are and for your loved ones and neighbors if you need to. Check on those if you have the chance and the ability to do so. But also, I mean, given that this has already been a wind-up for the O'Rourke campaign for governor, and there's already been find over on our website, ktsmradio.com, Beto O'Rourke plans Power Grid-themed Texas campaign tour. This performance over this coming week, we're expecting below freezing temperatures for a whole day, at least here just within the borderland. So how the rest of Texas do will probably be pretty significant, both in terms of, again, just abject human suffering, if we're seeing anything near what happened, last winter, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Feels like years ago, but that's just because of the tricks of time we've been encountering lately. But then also with the polling numbers out, what that shows that this, if the performance doesn't go off, this, again, could have electoral implications, as secondary as that may be. But it's the kind of thing we talk about here. So if you wanted to call in, again, the number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A few comments coming in here. John Brazelton saying that American politicians from Reagan on have talked about border security, but until Trump, little was done to ensure security. Leroy Chuck saying good luck getting rid of drugs now. And Stephen Crowder saying that the spin on this border crisis is so horrible. If someone wants to secure a border, they are painted as this ist or that ist. The vast majority of people that want to secure the border have no issues with legal immigration, but of course not how the mainstream media spins it. It's a sad situation we're in. We need to secure the border. Find myself agreeing with some of that sentiment there for sure. I mean, given the technology we're talking about deploying in a lot of ways, the fact that we can't make it so that you don't know everything happening along even the very long length of the border, frankly, in both directions, because yes, in our area, focus on a lot of the southern border issues, but there's more than a little bit that happens north of the border. You ever hear that BC Bud? That's not coming from anywhere down south. That's British Columbia. So we've got our own issues on the other side too. And not addressing them, I mean, it feels a little bit like an ostrich head in the sand kind of moment with a lot of this, just baffling to me. Anyway, getting to more of those calls on the line, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast on the line here with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Barbara, I guess Trump didn't end illegal drug use also, huh? You know that recreational pot use is legal in 18 states. The most abused drugs are prescription drugs. And how about tobacco and alcohol, those reliable killers of way back, the best of capitalism, you know? My body, my choice. It doesn't matter if somebody can profit from my death and my cancers and so forth. You know, one of the things in life that I think life should be about is a search for truth, about having a grasp on reality, free of illusions and delusions and misconceptions. And I'd like to think that I know what's going on, who runs the show, how the political and economic systems in this country function. And don't get me wrong, I've been taken in the past. I've been conned by con men into bad investments. And as a kid, I was filled with religious myths and fantasies. So after those experiences and several years of bouncing around jobs after graduating from college, my uncle recruited me into his real estate company. I returned to UTEP and got a major in real estate, where I studied real estate financing, financial analysis, appraisals, real estate law, all of which eventually led me to the financial services industry. to fight the insurance industry by educating consumers about the ripoff in the financial services jungle. We crunch a lot of numbers in our business. So I like to think I'm a critical thinker, an analytical thinker, a researcher, an iconoclast, and an anti-establishmentarianism. And I've been a student of the news and history and politics and philosophy and theology and science since my days at Jesuit high school. I got to read some great books there and then write about them and debate the controversial ideas in them. And we were studying about the Vietnam War, the environmental movement, the conquest of the Americas, poverty and racism in America, and U.S. and Latin American foreign policy in high school, if you can imagine. Now, I like to think I'm also a free thinker, in spite of having been raised to be a conservative Catholic. My parents sent me to Catholic grade school and high schools from which I graduated, and my Jesuit professors were the greatest intellectual influence in my life. And we had religion class 4 days a week. So by the time I started high school, I already thought I was going to go to hell. And so I was asking my Jesuit professor some really tough and out-of-the-box questions in religion class about predestination and about the way God has treated or allowed his beloved children to be treated by others, like the devil perhaps, like the billions of God's beloved children living in living hells for no fault of their own. Anyway, my religion professor, a Jesuit, threatened to fail me, in which case I wouldn't give him a diploma for skipping senior mass day on Fridays. And I told him to go for it if he could live with flunking one of his best students for skipping mass like the other religion professor students were. And I just started hanging out with him. Anyway, that and studying science, philosophy, social studies, and business in college led me into leaving Catholicism for Christianity, and then from being a Christian to a deist, and finally from being a deist to an agnostic and a secular humanist who trust in science, distrust politicians, popes, priests, preachers, and plutocrats. And unlike most of your listeners and callers who are Republicans and Trumpers, I'm a political independent and I have the voting record to prove it. Bottom line, in my analysis, the America that we are in right now is facing 4 very serious crises. One, the global pandemic caused by global trade and capitalism. We're failing the pandemic because of the COVIDiots, the anti-maskers, and the anti-vaxxers, and we're going to have more pandemics because they come with global trade and capitalism. 2, we're going through this anthropogenic global climate weirding that has caused and will cause many more environmental catastrophes with millions of deaths and trillions in property damages and losses. Number 3, domestic terrorism and living in a country where no one is safe anywhere, anytime from all the nuts with guns who are full of hate for minorities, Jews, illegal immigrants, or their fellow students and kids in school and people shopping and worshiping. Nobody is safe anywhere. What a disaster. How can America be great that way? Gross income and wealth inequality. That's driving some of the craziness in the streets, the riots in the streets. It's unbelievable. We have incredibly few rich people and a whole bunch of people who are just getting by. Finally, we live in a deeply divided country of tribes with a broken Congress, broken by plutocrats and the Republican Party and the lemmings in Trump's cult and all of his going-ons that he's continuing to do to incite violence in this country. His actions are keeping us from solving the first 3 problems in this country, along with the Republicans in Congress. Thank you very much.
I'm glad we eventually made our way around to a point there. Maybe indulged it a little bit too long, but okay, let's go to that 4 points you made there about the pandemic. I don't think anyone out there reasonably believes that there are issues associated with it, and including, since you brought it up there, the former president, again, who it bears repeating, is under whom the vaccine was developed, just to say. And frankly, as we then deal with those problems going forward, I find that's an interesting persuasive argument that you're trying to make about independent thought and thinking about it when it comes down to putting everything on the feet of a previous administration. Now, there is no administration that I find myself to be evaluating as without fault or blameless in anything that has gone on, but it is very interesting that there's not much of a focus in any of this we're talking about here about why there's only the previous at fault and none of the current at fault. That just is a little bit baffling to me, because if you really want to talk about pandemic response and what is stymieing it, let's talk about some of the developments that have happened under this current administration, the Biden administration. We have seen the attempt to put into the vaccine mandate, that being blocked by the Supreme Court. So sure, you may chalk that one up from your point of view, but then also the reduction of the quarantine period as recommended by the CDC to say that it is not going to be 10 days, it is going to be 5 days now. And that pretty transparently is for a political purpose in order to try and get more people back in the workforce and all of that here. So if you're going to lay all the troubles on any one particular administration and say that, and then everyone else did no wrong, or even just by omission, there is nothing wrong with the rest of them. And of course, getting in the guns there, as you often do, just kind of baffles me, because frankly, if we're talking about constant problems that you can see in and around and what's going along with them, if the guns were the problem, you'd know it. It wouldn't be these stops and starts. It would be constant and incessant and at genocide levels. There are literally hundreds of millions of guns in this country. And yet, what is the currently number one killer of 18 to 45-year-olds, if I believe I've got my stat right, is fentanyl. And the fentanyl that is primarily imported illegally and then crossing our borders illegally, either through established ports of entry or trafficked across. So I'm not saying that anything you brought up there is unimportant, even if I'm getting a little bit of flack for talking about some of or giving a little bit too much indulgence there, but I was hoping a point would come here, so I think we finally came to one. To say that these are the only things that are important and nothing else is foolhardy at best to me. We'll take more calls coming out of this break here. Due for that right now. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Justin Creed, your CBS 4 News Update. When it comes to treating high-risk patients with COVID-19, there is another potentially life-saving option. Besides the hard-to-come-by monoclonal antibody infusion treatment, Dr. Edward Michelson with Texas Tech Health Sciences Center in El Paso says not to forget the COVID-19 pills, which have even more benefits than the antibody treatments. He said the pill is available in a limited number of pharmacies and does require a prescription from your doctor. If you're at high risk of being hospitalized with COVID-19, Dr. Michelson suggests consulting with your doctor to decide which treatment is best for you. A Las Cruces man is accused of shooting two who has been ordered to stay in jail without bond. A judge stated that 27-year-old Oscar Quintana is a danger to society and will wait behind bars until his trial. Last week, CBS 4 reported that he was arrested after police say he shot at two people in a car. They were not hurt. Quintana is also accused of shooting and wounding a man the day after Christmas. With your CBS 4 News Update, I'm Justin Cree.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Sunland Park. Watch for an injury accident. Gateway Boulevard, northbound south of Trans Mountain. An accident with police responding there. The crash is at Cohen Avenue. Gateway Boulevard, westbound at Yarborough. An injury accident reported there. George Dieter, northbound at Traywood. EMS on the scene of an injury accident. Lee Trevino or Montwood could be an alternate. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. A quiet setup for us tonight and again for your day tomorrow. But tomorrow afternoon into the evening, we quickly start to see our weather deteriorate as our next storm system arrives. Look for a chance for some rain to change over to some icy conditions for a short period overnight before completely changing over to snow for Thursday, along with a very hard freeze for the borderland.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Don't drive much, don't pay much with pay-per-mile insurance from Allstate. Life is good when you're in the driver's seat. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Hey Texas, this is Eric Burton. And I'm Adrian Casada, and we are Black Pumas. We've partnered with Don't Mess with Texas to turn up the message to keep Texas clean. So come on, join hands and let us be united. Let's all do our part in taking care of our beautiful state roads. It's time to step up. Together, we can keep Texas litter-free. Don't mess with Texas, y'all. Peace.
When El Paso Children's Hospital first opened its doors in 2012, they forever changed pediatric healthcare in the region. More families stay in El Paso for specialty treatment instead of leaving town. More children have access to pediatric specialists. 7 pediatric specialty clinics help achieve the best possible outcomes. And there's so much more to come. El Paso Children's Hospital, celebrating 10 years of pediatric specialty care in the region. 10 years of wonder.
Hey guys, it's Edge Martinez. My family's gather in the kitchen. It's our favorite place to catch up. Keep germs out. I use Lysol on countertops, tables, and the fridge handle. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Get your biggest refund guaranteed. Jackson Hewitt Tax Pros will help find thousands worth of new tax credits so you get every dollar you deserve. So why wait? Schedule an appointment with one of their tax pros and learn more at jacksonhewitt.com. This report is sponsored by Jackson Hewitt.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at KTSMradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live reading through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, live streaming, rather, iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Oh, we get into it sometimes, don't we? A couple topics focused on here today, including elections, that winter storm, and the impact between the two. Frankly, we've had a year since, well, not quite a year, coming up on a year since the last real bad instance, and how that works out. Probably having some implications at the ballot box, if not in this current one in the upcoming November, but also just stay safe and keep those safe around you, safe and warm as we're dealing with that the rest of this week. But then also economic developments and such, all important, and we are taking calls. That number to do so is 915-544-5876. 544-KTSM. Want to call on the line? That's about the better ways to do so. A lot of commentary about that just recent call. Again, maybe Leroy Chuck saying, thanks, I've changed my mind now after listening to you. And the point is asking, what was the point? I think it came down to 4 points there, the 4 biggest issues going on. I was very interested in knowing what that was, so maybe I gave it a little bit too much leeway. But, hey, we got time, and we'll talk about it. So if you're wanting to call on yourself, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Do have Andrew on the west side on the line here right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon to all. How you doing, Andrew?
Oh, doing just fine. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, reference that Raul character. Thank you for that interesting autobiography. I may not agree with you, but I will fight for your right to voice your opinion, no matter how much I disagree with them. Second of all, one of the things that is still happening in El Paso, and I noticed, and I'm sure you all noticed, the supply chain issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and it's interesting that thing that's coming that I saw today. Number one, trying to get school supplies. You can't find a single spiral notebook for these school kids. And number two, you go down to the Wendy's down the street and you can't even get a baked potato because they don't have any in stock. I don't know if those are just 2 minor things, may not be life's critical elements, but they are something that's occurring due to the supply chain. And number 3, Raul's point about guns. Having been in the criminal justice system as a corrections and a law enforcement officer for 32 years, I can tell you this much. You are never going to get rid of the gun problem unless you punish criminals and enforce the existing laws on the book. Too many of these left-wing politicians that are elected prosecutors don't want people to go to jail or prison. So they're putting them out on cashless bond and back on the street just to do the same thing over again.
Yeah, more than a couple of, I think, developing court cases going on with that. But on the supply issues, personal anecdote actually from myself this past week. So we had a vehicle in my family that had been a daily driver and had fallen below reliable standards. We'd been trying to do some fix up with it, but actually the garage we had been using to fix it up after having done major repairs like transmission and that kind of thing before the pandemic, still was having issues, weird sounds, not accelerating correctly, all that kind of stuff. We ended up being like, okay, particularly since the guys we were working with are no longer there and we'll have to start this all over again, let's just get rid of it. So we took it to one of those local buy your car kind of places and got slightly over double what it blue booked for. And this was by no means a perfect vehicle. Let them know everything going on with it, but ended up in that kind of a situation. So that's, again, combined with what you're talking about with the supply chain issues, it's a weird time out there for just about anything. I actually had former teacher of mine that I'm still friends with on social media say that they sold their used vehicle for $7,000 more than they paid for it, having bought it just a few years ago and not having used it much over the pandemic. So that's how upside down things are, particularly when it comes to those issues. So yeah, I've said it before, I'll probably say it again before we're done here. You might not be able to get, it probably won't be the situation that you can't get anything, the shelves being totally bare, though we're uncomfortably close to that for my likings, but it's probably going to be that you're not going to be able to get exactly what you want when you need it. I'd always been a little bit of a subscriber of have a little bit more on hand, doing my own, back house warehousing, but it's getting weirder on that. That's something we're going to be focusing on more this week as well. A couple of interviews coming up with international shipping and even trucking specialists coming up. So we'll definitely be talking a lot more about this because it's very pressing on my mind as well. I will certainly agree with you on that.
Yeah, try getting a used auto part now. It's practically impossible. Last one I tried to get for an individual neighbor of mine had to come from none other than Wilmington, Delaware, out of a junkyard because they no longer make the part.
Yeah, it's fun stuff right now. So stay buckled up is the best I can say. So thank you for the points in the call. Do appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, you too. All right, we got at least one more call on the line here. Again, if you wanted to squeeze in before the end of the show, 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. If you have a call on the line right now, you're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Willie.
Hi there, Willie. What's on your mind?
Oh, good. Just wanted to say you're doing a good job, Andrew. A lot what the previous gentleman had to say was very true and spot on. And I just did evaluation on one of my trucks, and I tell you, it's like $12,000 above Blue Book value right now because the truck prices are so ridiculous. Because I went down to a truck lot to look at purchasing a new vehicle, and I tell you, the truck prices are ridiculous.
I can imagine, particularly for that category. Oh, I've thought about getting a truck off and on, and now I'm going to be like, we'll hold off for half a decade is what my kind of back of mind thinking at this point.
I'm telling you, at least a year, because I've talked to a few dealers, and I tell you, it's just ridiculous. And power to you, brother, because what was not the previous caller just hung up right now on the one before. I don't know if his name is Raul. He is seriously intoxicated by the exuberance of his verbosity. It's like, dude, he needs to calm down a bit.
I love your phrasing there. That was brilliant. That was pretty great. And yeah, I was hoping we would come around to a point, and we did eventually. Whether it was worth it is up to the individual here, but that's what we're here to do. And maybe I indulged a little bit too much, but it's worked out so far. So I guess we'll keep doing it.
No, like I said, more power to you. Appreciate you. Thank you for the call, and I'll be calling back. You're doing a good job, brother.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your input there. Do appreciate it. Exuberance of the verbosity. I'm gonna have to write that one down. That's a pretty good one there. So thank you for the point and the call. I mean, these issues going on, they are not going to disappear overnight. Specifically, I've got an interview coming up with someone who does international trucking on both borders and both sides, all sides of the borders of the basically the whole North American continent here, Canada, US, and Mexico. And some of the things going on, I mean, this relates a little bit to the whole Canada trucker protest going on right now and the impacts coming out of that. I mean, just all the factors. These are the ones swirling in my mind. The increase in trade and demand for it that we're seeing within our sector, the railway thefts that are going on out in California, which a lot of goods are getting stacked up on. That is probably going to further increase the pressure on things like that. What is going on in Canada, and just all of it. it is swirling around. Something I have said since the start of the pandemic is that even just discussions with my own family about, okay, how are we going to navigate what's coming next, is that there has been no single event that has made me think, okay, we are SOL. It's been more along the lines of, okay, it's, on a scale of perfect to disaster. We've never been all the way one way or the other, or at least in the entirety of the entire country, but it seems like we've been inching a little bit more towards the other side. And each small event, even if it is something that could be recovered, as they keep aggregating, as they keep happening, more of it leads us to more and more. As more capacity gets removed, I mean, going back even a couple of years when there was that random nor'easter or downwind or thing that took out hundreds of thousands of acres of cropland and new crops that just had to be plowed under in Iowa within the last couple of years. Events like that, I just kind of keep them in the back of my mind and thinking, okay, that means that there is essentially added vulnerability to the system. And the system, even if it has been the vulnerability shown with the whole just-in-time supplies issue, each just next whack at it, there's no single, crack at it that is going to make it break. But, straw that broke the camel's back kind of situation makes me wonder what is the true capacity and the capability. So that's why we're going to be talking a whole lot more about that. Due for that next break, final break of the hour here. So if you want to slip in one more call, you can do so by calling 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
It's I-10 westbound at Sunland Park. Watch for an injury accident. Gateway Boulevard, northbound south of Trans Mountain. An accident with police responding there. The crash is at Cohen Avenue. Gateway Boulevard westbound at Yarborough. An injury accident reported there. George Dieter, northbound at Traywood. EMS on the scene of an injury accident. Lee Trevino or Montwood could be an alternate. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
Have you ever thought that the one thing connecting you between work and family is your car? Brake Masters always thinks this way. It's what we like to call being in Brake Master shape. Download coupons at BrakeMasters.com. Then head home safely again.
Brake Masters. We give you an honest break.
Under Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas economy is full speed ahead. Ranked the #1 state for business every year he's been governor. #1 in exporting products all over the world. #1 in businesses moving to the state. And well over 1 million new jobs since the pandemic. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, the Texas economy is the envy of the nation. But under Biden and Beto, Texas would come to a screeching halt. Open borders causing chaos and endangering our safety. Higher taxes hurting families and businesses. The Green New Deal crushing our economy. On March 1st, vote to keep Texas on the right track. Governor Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Take a trip back to Apartment 4D with the crew from the sitcom New Girl and rewatch the series with real-life friends Zooey Deschanel, Hannah Simone, and Lamorne Morris.
We could do a whole episode dedicated to Jake Johnson and his lack of awareness around certain technological things, especially with his phone.
Listen to Welcome to Our Show on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Monica Cortez. What motivates me? A lot of people depend on me, and I want to do my job right to be able to protect my community and give them what they need to better prepare for their day. I guess I just want to tell people who have been following me, who have been watching KTSM and seeing me grow in this career, thank you. It means a lot to see you appreciate what I do. I'm going to make sure I put out the best forecast I can because I do care about you. I care about El Paso. So thank you.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may have been doing so over this past couple of hours, if you've been tuning in and out. We've been around and we'll continue to do so as we are 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. As I've been mentioning, a couple things that we're working on for you all, particularly this week. A lot of supply chain, logistics, what the heck is going on, and what can be told from those involved in the industries dealing with these issues, and particularly getting reports from on the ground in those places like Canada or international shipping. So we got a couple of those coming up for you this week. Don't believe we've been called back for jury duty at all. That was a possibility, and we'll see if it's come back up. But I think we're still good. At least it's saying. I got another message here that we should be good. That was a possibility for Thursday. It was supposed to report at 1:30 in the afternoon. Now, last time I was called for bad end of dawn is essentially what I was supposed to be reporting for. So if that's a pandemic-related policy about having people staggered approaches, I don't know, 1:30, it was going to probably affect the show, but thankfully that has been removed, so we'll be up as we are. So those interviews coming up, and again, our focus is here today on some of the issues and forecasts, as much as we can tell, what's going on with elections. And this winter storm, just to quote again from differently, when talked about this one before, National Weather Service, wind chills in the single digits and in some areas below zero starting Wednesday night and into Saturday morning. So this doesn't sound quite like 2011 when it was the solid week of freezing solid. Just take some care. Make sure you got yours and yours and anyone you care about, or even neighbors, friends, etc., bundled up and good to go, and those pipes dealt with. I got mine wrapped currently, been wrapped since we got the last freeze coming through. I'm probably going to do another level of it. So just stay safe out there with that. Remember, people, pipes, pets, plants, want all those things to survive. Take some extra care with it. But then the electoral implications that come out of this, if the Texas grid does not have the performance it needs to, if there's anywhere even approaching similar kind of outages as we saw in the last year and couple of years, probably going to have some impact, maybe not in the primary ballot, though it could open the door for a runoff challenge. I don't think there's any question in my mind that current Texas Governor Greg Abbott is going to handily win the primary. But if this doesn't work out, this could be, as much as it is very cynical to talk about the political implications for essentially a natural disaster that could happen to the rest of the state, it's hard to ignore it either. Because if it doesn't perform well, this is something that Abbott has said that we will fix. And if voters don't believe that he's actually followed through on that, probably going to end up punishing it here as well. Leroy Chuck saying locally, if he's learned anything from watching El Paso in the last 2 years, everyone will lose their minds. Yeah, probably. So also be just safe on the roads out here. I mean, we get a quarter inch of rain, much less actual snow coming down, and the already bad driving just goes even further off the window or off the cliff. So again, be safe in a variety of ways out there, because it's probably going to be an interesting into the weekend. So just take care with it here. But back to the electoral implications, again, with Abbott needing this to work out well, there's also the latest polling numbers, according to the University of Houston's public affairs research, looking at them within a margin of error of plus or minus 2.2%, according to their survey with 1,400 YouGov respondents who are registered to vote in Texas. Those indicating that O'Rourke, with about Abbott leading O'Rourke 48 to 43%, so outside the margin of error there, certainly. That might be the next headline you see. If that were to come in, a lot of people will be probably crowing about that. So still a handy lead by, again, this pre-election poll. But the real interesting thing is that while O'Rourke is doing better with minorities in general, he's barely clearing 50% with Hispanic voters. And this is very interesting and emblematic of the effort that Republican Party in general in Texas has done. I mean, the kickoff for Abbott's campaign was in the Rio Grande Valley, not even just for an optic thing or to symbolize his focus on the border, which he has certainly been making as a very serious. I mean, the ads that you're hearing go through have noticed the ads coming up for Dan Patrick as well. Patrick not anywhere near as there's no one within shouting distance of Abbott anymore. He raised about $1.4 million over this last over January that we've had reported currently, and everyone else drawing pretty dead except for Huffines, a little close, and Allen West. Everyone else literally either no report or $0 reported as raised. And then when it comes to Lieutenant Governor Patrick, raising about $200,000 with $22 million still on hand, and the next closest raising $7,000, that being a Daniel Miller, and otherwise no reports. So it's not exactly looking contentious for them when it comes to these governor races. But O'Rourke having raised $1.3 million with about just shy of $6 million left of cash on hand, and no one else within shouting distance there either. The next closest having reported has raised $3,000 from Joy Diaz out of Austin. It's looking like that will probably be the contest. But again, with the O'Rourke campaign now planning on this being a major campaign push, natural disasters often have implications not usually as directly electoral with campaigning coming out of it. Leroy Chuck not happy with the breakdown of that potential poll there. Again, it was those that have signed up for this on the YouGov site. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some biases in here. Just the latest polling that is out. The only thing that really matters is what ultimately comes down for the ballot box here. That's about doing it for our show here today. I want to thank everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. You are all truly what helped make this show what it is, talking about the issues that affect us here in the borderlands. So again, thank you to our guest that was on the show today, Robbie Gray, editor of the El Paso Inc. Talking more with him in future weeks, and we get closer to these elections. Absolutely. I'll be talking more and about some of those other things. Again, a lot more coming up this week. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Coming up tomorrow, talking about what the heck is going on with that trucker situation in Canada and what that means here. So we'll do it again then. Stay safe out there. Look towards motorcycles when out on the road. Wrap your pipes, pets, cars, whatever. See you all tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain all the way past Thorne Avenue, and I-10 westbound from Wrestler to Thorne. It's heavy stop-and-go traffic with 5 to 10-minute delays. I-10 westbound at Sunland Park, look for an injury accident there. Gateway Boulevard. Northbound, south of Trans Mountain, there's a crash at Cohen Avenue, and a new crash just popped up. Injury accident, Dyer at Diana. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Let's face it, credit cards are pretty much a necessity.
New tires for the car? Here's my card.
I order takeout, use my card.
And most of us just accept the high interest rates credit cards charge as a necessary evil.
What are you going to do?
Get a low